this really relate to you, Julius?
Just January 6, 1992, interviewing Julius Moore. What's your first name?
Viola.
Viola Moore, in their homes. Okay. I guess I can begin by asking, how long have you lived in Albina?
Lived in Albina now.
22 years.
This is not Albina. This is Urban.
Well, this is Albina. When I say Albina, I mean North
Okay, longer than the 22 years, at least about 35 years. I'd say about 35 years.
What brought you guys to Portland?
Okay, I came to Portland as a teenager because my dad was out here working in the Albina yard for the Union Pacific Railroad. And at that time, it was during the summer months, so I came out to get some summer work, as a high school, student. My plans was to go back to Illinois and go back to school in the fall. But then I got out here, and my oldest brother being here, I decided to try and talk my dad into letting me stay. And he did. I had an aunt living in Vanport. And at the time she was living in Vanport, my dad was living in the Albina district down here in the Union Pacific Roundhouse yard, working as a fire builder for the building steam up in your locomotive. And so he got me a job down there. And he allowed me to stay here as long as I would go to school. So, I ended up staying.
What brought you to Portland?
I came with my parents at the age of 12. I went to elementary school, Vanport.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. I went to Jane Addams High School, which is where the Lloyd Center is now. That was an all-girls school, Jane Addams High School. Then when it closed down, I went to Roosevelt High School in St. John, where I graduated from in 1948.
Have Albina changed much?
Lots. About 95% of all the blacks that lived in the Portland area was in the Albina district, all down at the hill, because most of them worked in the railroad. The ones that was working in the shipyard mostly lived in Vanport, and that was the ones that worked at the shipyard in Vancouver. The ones that lived across on the west side, which was a lot of black people lived on the west side of the river. At that time, they went to Lincoln High School over there and Roosevelt out in North Portland. At the time that the blacks was living across the river, they all lived in the government houses.
What year was this? Was this after the flood? Or
this was, this was during the flood. This was before the flood. There was a lot of black people lived across the river before the flood. They even bought homes. Some of the first homes that black people bought was over there around the Montgomery wards, and off of Bond Street over in that area. The other group of people, that black people that actually bought a home, was always, all of that was down across Vancouver Avenue, down near the going towards the river, and they call that Albina district, which were interstate, Mississippi, and Vancouver Avenue. And very few blacks lived on this side of Vancouver Avenue. They all lived down the hill, near going towards the river. And their main transportation back and forth, people would ride the bus from Vanport, and they'd get off on the interstate, and then the biggest of the black businesses was down in the Albina district and down now by where the Coliseum is now.
Okay.
You had lots Williams Avenue was the main street. That's where most of your black clubs were at that time, Williams Avenue.
What year?
This was in the around 46, 47, 48. And, it go back to around 41, 42. There was a lot of black businesses, like nightclubs, lots of nightclubs. There was a lot of oil restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
There was a black hotel used to sit right on Interstate called the Metley Hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where most of the blacks, when they came, they didn't know anything else but Albina District. And Williams Avenue was the main drag.
Because they, to be truthful about it, matter of fact, they really wasn't allowed over in this area. That's why they had to be in that area. They wasn't allowed to come on this side.
When you say not allowed because of housing discrimination?
Yes, right.
Not only housing discrimination.
Discrimination
Discrimination
period.
period. At the time, the police department, if they seen a black coming anywhere past Williams Avenue this way,
That's right.
going east, they would stop and question them, want to know what they're doing over in this area. You don't have no business over here. You know, this is white people's area. You know, German. This was old German neighborhood.
Oh, really?
All of this was old German and Swedish neighborhood over in this area.
Okay.
And if you didn't work over in this area or go to school over in this area, say for instance, like Benson was an all boys school, and Sabin Elementary School was an all boys school too, which is an elementary school now. And that's the only way you could come over, and then you go back on the other side of Williams Avenue. So that's how all that came about.
And most of the black, they had a lot of black women that worked over in this area.
Right.
Worked doing day work, housework for rich whites over here. You had a lot of Jewish people over there, and you had a lot of blacks that would go back and would come up the hill and go to work over in this area for them doing day work. But then you had an Egyptian theater on the corner of Union Avenue and Russell, which was a Jim Crow theater.
Oh, I see.
Okay, you could go to that theater, but you wasn't allowed to sit upstairs. I mean, downstairs. You could go upstairs, and you could sit there. They had ushers. When you walked through the door, if a black walked through the door, the first thing they did was usher him upstairs. Until the time that, at that time, we had a lot of young blacks who was beginning to get older, and we got tired of that stuff. We started to rebel against it. We'd go into the theater in droves, and we'd go upstairs. We didn't refuse to go upstairs because they would throw you in jail if you didn't. We'd go upstairs, and what we did, we just accidentally spilled pop down on top of the white people, you know. If we didn't spill pop down on it, we'd maybe say do something else and spill it on it. They got tired of that stuff falling on their heads, you know. So finally, after a while, they decided they would let us sit down below. Eventually, it become all black theater.
Oh, really?
Because the whites stopped coming when they found out that the blacks could sit along with them. Other than that, you could go downtown, any of the theaters downtown, and you could sit where you wanted.
The Roundup Theater, the Circus Theater, and they had one more, I can't remember the name of that. And plus they had a theater over on Mississippi, the Joy Theater, where most of the blacks went over there. The Joy Theater, remember that one?
You had other theaters like the one up there on Union.
That was the Avalon.
Yeah, okay, those theaters and
Is that Union Avenue?
Yeah,
that was the Avalon Theater.
But actually, the blacks wasn't allowed in them.
No.
Oh.
They had theaters on Alberta. The blacks wasn't allowed in them. The only theaters we could go to the downtown theater. The other activities that black kids had in this city was a skating rink, roller skating rink out on Sandy Boulevard. And we had a night, and the whites had a night.
Oh.
I think our nights was on Saturdays.
Saturday
night. They would let us go out there on Saturday night.
But
the whites had it any day.
2 nights. Yeah. Then they started giving you 2 nights.
But the whites had it any time. They had it 4 or 5 nights a week.
Oh. What do you remember the years of this?
This was back in this was around 48, 49, 50. And I think they kind of knocked it off around 50, didn't they?
Going too far up. A lot of that happened before that.
Yeah.
Before it was 49 and 50, because that roller skating, that was, say, 46 and 47.
Okay.
With the roller skating, because I still was in school. That was 46
but
and 47.
A lot of that stopped around that time.
Yeah. But when all that was going on, that they had the nights for the blacks and white, that was doing 46 and 47.
Yeah. Now, during this time, they had streetcar. You had trolley cars.
Really?
Portland had lots of streetcars back in those days, and when they made a change over from the streetcars to the trolley, which was electric cars, you know, they decided to take all your streets up, your streetcar tracks up.
Mm-hmm.
They went all up into the hills. Streetcars went all up there, all over the city.
When you say the hills, you mean what?
West Hills.
Okay.
Over in the West Hills. Okay. During that time, the shipyards had closed down. There wasn't hardly any work that blacks could get except digging a ditch. Construction, you could get construction work if it wasn't that very much as construction work, but the city at that time was going through a phase of taking up streetcar lines and putting new water sewers in. Well, that called for a lot of manual labor, digging and going on. Blacks couldn't get those jobs until they got to that phase. Well, by the time they got to that phase, most of the black men that was living in Vanport, this was before the Vanport flood, which come along in May of 48. Most of the black men that couldn't get jobs went into Pasco, Washington, Richland, Washington, and they would work up there with their families down here. Very few families was able to move up there because it was bad up there too. But during the flood, it happened on a Sunday in Vanport. A lot of the black men.
It was a Mother's Day.
Yeah, but a lot of black men just had come back from Pasco on the weekend. They would come down every weekend to be with their families. And that Sunday night they would go back to Pasco and they work a week and they work all the week and then they come back. Okay, then after the flood hit, there was a lot of black men that moved their families to Pasco and Richland and Seattle, places like that. Them that came back into Portland managed to get jobs with the city, digging holes, have taken up streetcar lines. And that was all the work they could get. They hired maybe 2 or 3 to work for the Park Bureau. And at that time, if you worked 6 months for the city, they had to make you a steady employee. So what they did, they knew they had this here, they had at least a 6 or 8 month project of putting in new water lines all over the city, taking up all your streetcar lines all over the city. So they hired blacks to do that dirty work. Dig the holes, put new sewer lines in. There was only about 2 blacks that actually were considered pipe fitters. They called them mechanics at that time. That was actually steady employees with the city. Yeah, 3 that I know of. Watkins was one of them. Old man Watkins used to walk up and down the street fixing washing machines here up until about 3 or 4 years ago he died. Watkins was a steady employee with the city. But Watkins couldn't stand what was going on with how they was discriminated against the blacks. Because they worked the blacks right up to a day or 2 before they would have their 6 months in, they would lay them all off. That mean that they couldn't be steady employees. They'd work them right up to maybe one day of the weekend just before you become a steady employee, and they'd lay you off. So what they did, I was working at that time for the Water Bureau. And there's a whole lot of black men was working that had come out of Pasco and during the Vanport flood.
Did you work in Pasco?
Yeah, I worked up there in Richland. But at the time that I was working here, I got a job here working for the Water Bureau, digging holes, putting in water lines and everything. I got up to 5 months, like in 2 days, and they're coming 6 months before I'd have been a steady employee. Everybody, all the blacks that was working for the city at that time, only like in 2 days before they become steady employees. They laid us all off on a Friday night. That Monday morning they rehired all white because all the dirty work was, all the digging and manual labor, all that was over with. Watkins was a steady man, so they couldn't lay him off. But he went and tried to fight it by himself got it, attorneys and things like that, and they made it so hard on him he had to give up his job because of the fact that he was fighting discrimination for the rest of the blacks. We didn't have no voice. We wasn't studied. We wasn't union, and so we didn't have any voice. Watkins went to bat for us because he was studied. He went before a guy named Frank Figg was the head of the city water bureau. And Frank Figg gave him such a hard time that he ended up, that's the reason Watkins never worked no more for the city or nobody else until he died. It's because of the fact that they treated him so bad, because he tried to fight discrimination the way they did us.
Well, what was the Urban League and things at that
Urban
time?
League didn't do nothing. The Urban League at that time was at the office set up downtown on Burnside. Okay, they had...
But I heard Urban League was set up originally to try to get the blacks on.
Originally, but there was white people in the office. It was set up that way, but the Urban League was always manipulated by white people. They at that time you had a few attorneys, black attorneys, actually come through here, and they tried to do things, and they didn't make no headways. They didn't make any headways. Finally, after a while, there was a lot of jobs eventually opened up in the foundries, big little small foundries all over town there, which wasn't very good, but it was a job, There was a few foundries opened up for blacks.
What's
the biggest foundry where they pour steel and Okay. Then you had a few jobs like that opened up for blacks, but they were so prejudiced that a lot of blacks just had to almost kill themselves in order to keep a job. ESCO was the largest foundry for hiring blacks. Shipyard hired a lot of, shipyard repair. They hired a lot of blacks. But the only job that they would give them was to go down in the hold of the ship and clean the oil out on the bottom of the ship. They would go out down in there with boxes of rags, just cleaning up the ship on their knees, crawling around that oil and cleaned up the ship. Very few blacks had. I doubt if it was over 4 or 5 blacks that had skilled jobs down there at that shipyard. And a lot of them knew how to weld, but they didn't get the jobs. So
a lot of them probably were working during the war, right?
A lot of them did work during the war, but a lot of blacks that was out here during the war left. And some of them left and went to Alaska. Some left here and went up into Pasco, Richmond, Washington, and places like that, and they never come back. A lot of them went to California because in the first place, Portland was always so prejudiced. There was a lot of blacks just wanted to get away from here, get back. A lot of people went back where they come from. Back down. Some went back to the south where they come from. Some went back to the east where they come from. But it was just one of those things that in Portland, the blacks that did stick it out here, they had to almost pioneer their way through this to the point where we are now in the Irvington district, because of the fact that they just wouldn't sell a black a home over in here. My wife's mother, they bought a house over in Fargo between Rodney and Union. And they bought that house. Was probably there was a very few black families that actually made it that far east of the Albina yard down there, Albina district, interstate. Very few blacks made it that far. There wasn't any blacks that bought any homes in Kenton. That was always a real prejudiced area. Well, no blacks out in there, but now farther west, they had housing projects, for blacks. They called it University Home. Now it's called, Columbia Villa.
Oh, yeah. Okay. And that was actually a war.
But now Columbia Villa, Columbia Villa during the war wouldn't let blacks live in there. They had a place called University Home. Columbia Villa was more suitable housing. But the homes...
It was mostly for servicemen and their wives.
Yeah, but University Homes did let whites live in it. Blacks could only live in University Home. It looked like a concentration camp. what it looked like. Then they had, after the flood, the government opened up those houses and let the flood victims rent those houses. See, there's a lot of flood victims end up in trailer houses across on the west side and
Guys Lake.
a place called Guy's Lake, 44th Court. Now it's which is all industrial. There's no homes over in there now. That's all industrial. The west side at one time I think was probably more blacks. The west side in Vanport, there was probably more blacks in those areas than it was anywhere else in the city of Portland. Other than there was a few blacks that was born and raised here, like Bishop Daniels and all of them was. I don't know if he was born and raised here, but he was as a young man back I think in the 30s. Was out there in a place called Russellville.
Russellville?
Yes, Russellville. That's going towards Mall 205 out in that area. That is a Russellville district. And that's where the Daniels and all of those people they even had a church out there. Bishop Daniel was living out there.
Mount Calvary.
Yeah. He was living out in that area. And there was other people's blacks that lived out in that area that had been in Portland for years and years and years. I mean, some of them been in back in the 30s, but it wasn't a whole lot of them. Now, maybe I better slow down and let you ask me some questions.
I wonder about the women. What are the women? What do they work? What was your occupation?
Women's worked in the shipyard. I didn't work in the shipyard. I was school. I was too young for shipyard. So I didn't work in the shipyard. My first job was working for Mine French downtown.
Oh, really?
I worked as a stock girl in the basement.
What year was this? Because that's a milestone, wasn't it?
47 and 48. I worked for Mine French.
You had to be one of the first.
No, it was a few more blacks.
Was it?
Wasn't a lot of blacks, but it was a few more blacks. Women there who was working.
Most of them ran the elevator, wasn't it?
Yes, right, ran the elevator. Because where our department that I worked in, it was only 3 blacks in there. And the rest of the women run the elevator, like we say. That's what they did. Right. And janitorial.
Janitorial?
Yeah.
How was it like raising a family here?
Raising a family wasn't that bad. Because actually, we was lucky enough to get jobs where we could raise our families, you know. But that was some rough days because during that time you had a lot of harvest work. We used to do work on the weekends. We'd just take the kids and we'd get in the car. We'd go out there. Used to have farms out in the out by the airport out in there. There was all farms out there then. The airport's out there now wasn't there. They had a little small one. It wasn't much bigger than this house. Okay, but they had the Spader Brothers farms all out there. And the Saturdays we could go out, pick beans. And we could pretty well make a little money doing that, you know, and with the money that you made on your job, you could make it real good. I mean, the kids never really had to worry about nothing. We always had something, you know. They never had to really worry about clothes or food or nothing like that. And, of course, in the later years, naturally, this got better, you know, as the kids grew up and everything. And then by the time Renee come along, we was doing real good. By the time Renee come along, I was working in the foundry, and then I was working, then I ended up in the bakery. I think when Renee was born, I was working in the hospital for $98 a month.
University of Oregon Medical School on here.
For $98 a month when Renee was born.
Yeah.
And we did a lot with that money. You know, we couldn't get paid but once a month. But when we did get paid, we stretched that money far enough. We even taken trips. We'd drive back to, every year in June, we would go back to see my mother and dad. We'd drive back there. We'd have money to go back there. I think at one time we run out of money coming back.
Yeah.
One time. But we always had a nice car to drive back there. You know, the money went farther then than it do now. You know.
And you know, to me, raising a family then, I speak from experience with us. I think it was fun because you did more things with your kids.
Oh, yeah, we did.
You know, my kids always played Little League Baseball. They was all in Boy Scout, Cub Scout. I worked with those groups. So it was a lot of fun at that time with your kids. Then they had, you go to PTA meeting and see the things that your kids did. My kids went to Boise Elementary School. Every May they would have May Day programs. Go down and see the maypole. It was a lot of fun to be with your kids, to raise your kids then.
Did you work?
No.
You got home with the kids?
But then you had a lot of black teachers here then.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
I was looking at this list here where, I don't know who written this list up, but it's a lot of community leader, black leaders they should have down here, like Mr. Vickers. You can write it. Mr. Vickers, Mr. Dr. Marshall.
Well, yeah.
Those was community leaders.
Yeah.
Now, see, he has here Philip Rudolph, Dr. Novell Unthang, sure, George Hart, and I heard Carthon. I wouldn't really say he was.
Let me comment on Unthang. Unthang was one of the few. He was one of the first black doctors in Portland.
Yeah.
He's the only one that really didn't do anything for his black people was concerned.
No.
He used to live right over here in the Irvington district. He did live over here. He was one of the few blacks, probably at that time, the only black that I knew of that lived over here in this area.
Oh, really?
He lived over here around 21st Street in a great big old house.
That's because he was married to a white lady.
Well, she would look like she
was
wasn't white.
passing.
She wasn't.
Just right
but
down over there.
They acted as
Yeah.
though they was white people. They didn't get the respect from black people like the black people that was doing something for black people. They always related to black or white people. They never did, as far as I'm concerned, they never did do anything that I could say for the blacks. And if anybody think that they did, they got another thing coming because they didn't. You had white people did more for blacks than
Unthang.
the novel Longtime.
Yes.
All right, now you had a black attorney that come through here, Mayfield Wells.
There you go.
Attorney Mayfield
He was
Wells.
on Williams Avenue, Williams in Alberta, on the corner of Williams and Alberta.
Before he moved up there, he was down here, right down here on Williams and around Tillamook, right? Just
Sacramento.
But anyway, Mayfield Wells left here because of the fact that he fought discrimination on the waterfront for blacks so hard to get the first blacks on the Portland waterfront as longshoremen. He fought it so hard. In fact, when I filled out my application to become a longshoreman, Mayfield Wells, we all met over at the old what is it? The Elks over at the
the
Elks all over there on Tillamook and Williams. And he sat down along with some government leaders and showed us every detail about filling out the application, which wasn't nothing. But they was going to use any mistake. If you misspelled, if you didn't dot an I, they was going to penalize you and was going to turn your application down on account of that. That was how hard they was fighting against us. And this was one of the things that Mayfield Wells sat down and did. He fought it until they hired 50 black longshoremen out of 350. It was 50 of us was black.
They have here community leaders.
Let me finish this here so that I can then wind that up and then you can tell. He fought that so hard. That after we did get on the waterfront, some of the blacks that fought it was fighting along with him never even got to be longshore. Like Palmer fought it. Although he ended up in the penitentiary for selling dope, but Palmer was one of the people that actually helped Mayfield Wells fight the injustice that was going on here on the waterfront. So, in order for him to do something for himself and advance in his law practice, he had to leave here and go to Seattle. After he fought so hard, they wouldn't give him no kind of cases. I mean, he couldn't. It was just nobody would hire him. You know, he had to go to Seattle to really advance his law practice.
Is he still living there?
As far as I never hear no more from him.
in San Francisco now.
Is he in Frisco?
Yeah, because Ray went to school with his daughter.
Yeah, but anyway, he was one of the few blacks that actually fought for blacks here. You had one other guy. I will say that one other guy that was that fought hard for blacks in Portland. He was with the Urban League, and his name was Shelton Hill and Barry.
That's who I was going to bring. That's why I was going to bring those names
Yeah.
up. These names
Shelton
they have
Hill.
here didn't do.
Shelton Hill and Barry. He ended up back in Chicago. Barry, what is Barry's name? But Barry was the first. He was the first, I would say, director of the Urban League here in Portland.
Spokesman, he really
Spokesman,
was.
yeah.
For the blacks.
Yeah, and then after he left and went to Chicago to run the national part of the Urban League, he went to Chicago to do that. Then Shelton Hill stepped in his shoes.
Right.
And from there on, there wasn't hardly any blacks that did anything that ran this Urban League, anything at all for the blacks. The first thing that they did was start hiring a lot of white women. You know what I mean? You know, this is the way of some of our leaders after that. They were so white woman struck. So that was their bag, you know. Where they should have had a black woman sitting down there in their office, they put a white woman there. So they really didn't do anything that I could give them a pat on the back for, as I'm concerned. I still can't, even now, I still can't say that they are doing nothing over at the Urban League to help make things better for the black community.
There's another one here they should have as community leader, Bill Benton. He was a community leader. He helped the young kids and things around Little League baseball and all that. Cause I worked with him with Little League baseball. And then there was Eagle Beaver, that had the first black radio station here.
Eagle
Beaver.
Yeah, he was in the paper.
He just passed a couple of weeks ago.
Oh,
yes.
His daughter is what's her name?
Anyway, he was the first black to have a black radio station here.
Grass. She works for Grass. You know her name. I can't think of her name now. Right?
She works for who?
She got this program called Grassroots. Oh, Richard would know who she is. It looks kind of
there is
what is her name? As well as I know, can't think of her name now. But that was Beaver's daughter.
What is what's his name?
Tell me what you're trying to say.
That was the man that had the Tropicana barbecue. He was a community leader. A lot of these guys, they have names down here. They must have came along during the 80s and 90s, because these guys here was not a community leader. Are these leaders here, are they supposed to be of now, or?
Well, some of them were like Philip Randolph was the leader doing that for Black Railroad workers, like the porters and stuff like that. He helped. He
wasn't really a community leader. But he did organize the Pullman Porters, black Pullman Porters in Portland.
Yeah.
There is a few people that but for him being really known towards blacks, he wasn't one of them. Those I don't know where they come up with them names at.
And then there is Reverend Crow, that had Mount Olive Baptist Church down there. He and his wife they was really community leaders, and Sister Crow is the one that has this center over here where Mrs. Carter works at.
She don't have it. She was this
founder.
She was the founder.
Yes.
So she's not living.
No, she's passed now. Now those are what you call community leaders there, and.
What about Reverend John Jackson?
John Jackson was one of the founders of the Black United Front.
Oh, was he?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was one of the founders of the Black United Front. But now, then they have they probably got Mac Dishon down there. Do they?
Oh, no.
They got Mac Dishon down there.
No.
They shouldn't.
Mac Dishon?
Mac Dishon shouldn't be one. Because shouldn't be.
Oh.
Because Mac Dishon was a black county sheriff during the Vanport days. And what they did during the Vanport days, they hired a lot of blacks that to be able to keep the other blacks in line as sheriff. See, Vanport had their own police department out there, which was the county, wasn't the city. Okay, they was hired by the county, and the only thing they could do is patrol Vanport. Mac Dishon was a county patrolling out there. He couldn't read his name if you laid it out there in front of him. I know because when I was a kid, they used to stop me and, hey boy, what do you think you're doing? I'd be speeding up down the street, you know. He'd stop it. He'd give me a ticket. Now, put your name. You sign your name on this thing. He could. I could sign anybody's name. He never would know the difference. You know, he wasn't no leader. After Vanport flood, the few black cops, the only blacks that actually had any pull was a guy named Jesse Thomas. Jesse Thomas had more education than any of them, but he worked up to lieutenant out there as a county. But after the Vanport flood went down, then none of them put on as a county sheriff. The Magdalene went down to the county courthouse, and they made an elevator man out of him. So it would be a slap in the face to call him a community leader. They named that center after him. That used to be a grade school. That was the old Elliott School. Where the Magdalene Center is now, part of it still sits there, where the gymnasium, where they have, that's part of that old school. It was probably one of the first schools that blacks was allowed to go to as a grade school.
What about John Gallatin?
Gallatin come along years after.
Just a few years ago.
A few years ago. John Gallatin come here I don't know where Gallatin come from, but Gallatin, when he was living, he did join the Black United Front in fighting a lot of issues. This is why John Gallatin stood along side by side with the Black United Front fighting different discrimination issues downtown. This is why they gave him the credit. He did bring up some good points for advancing blacks along in different things. So he was missed because he was one of the few black ministers in Portland that would get out there and march right along with us. I never will forget the last time I had an opportunity to be with Gallatin was up in Salem. We marched in Salem when we had bomb threats. We had threats from the neo-Nazis, and they showed up at this rally we had up there after we marched through Salem. They showed up, and we didn't know who they was until the state troopers showed up and pointed them out to us. We had one black federal man that was from out of Seattle was with us, and he went to the state troopers. The state troopers was all in blue jeans and things like that because they had heard the same threat that we had heard. In fact, they was there to protect us. We didn't know it. And Gallatin was one of our main speakers at that time. But he knew about the threat, but he didn't refuse to march. He still marched.
So that's why they honor him?
That's why they honored him, because he never backed down on his issues. He actually did fight hard to try to make things better for the blacks.
What was the black real estate man name? Remember him? Before he passed, they used to live back over here from us.
That was Mr. He had a bunch of daughters.
Yes, you know him real well.
I can't think his name.
He was a black real estate, one of the first black real estate.
Yeah. Oh, man, I can't call that man's name. And I bet he ain't on that sheet either.
That's what you think I'm saying.
Yes.
These guys...
I wrote that up, just for my knowledge.
Oh, okay.
Oh, now who is this A.D. Griffin?
He's another older guy. He started these North Star Blacks newspaper back in, this was before Vanport.
Okay, see, I didn't know about
It's like
pre...
It's like really Oregon history because the newspaper covers stories for blacks all over Oregon.
Okay, now,
as well as Portland.
you did have some blacks. They did have, there was some newspapers that was going at that time. Blacks did have a newspaper out. They also had the first black taxi cab in Portland. Was called the Beacon Cab. And they was downtown. You know where the downtown, where the Portland University is down there? What is that, Portland State? Portland State University down there. Okay, that used to be a high school. That was Lincoln High School. That's the old Lincoln High School. Okay, right over, 2 blocks over from that school was the Beacon Cab stand, which was a black cab company. That was the first black cab
And they was
company.
allowed to do business downtown?
They did business down there. They did business all over. But then that time, your white cab companies, you had a yellow cab here at that time.
What happened to the businesses on Williams?
The business on Williams was manipulated through, at one time, through Emmanuel Hospital. They bought up all the homes and things like that. You used to have right there, right across from the Urban League. That was all nightclubs in there. Now it's a great big old lot.
Okay.
Okay, where they got the those disabled people's homes right across the street there on Williams there. That used to be a club there. Used to be a Chinese restaurant there. This and blacks
And a cleaners.
And a cleaners. Then you had a market across the street from it. You
Midway.
had
It was Midway.
Midway, and right there where you got those senior citizen homes right there on the corner, that was a club. They had couple of clubs there.
And Cuno
Restaurants,
beauty shop.
barber
Then they had
shop.
Scottish barbecue.
Yeah, Scottish barbecue was up street there.
Well, now, was these businesses thriving? Was this a thriving business community?
yeah.
Or was it,
Oh yeah, it was
Yeah,
really
was
thriving.
declining?
Yeah.
And,
You didn't have to go no further. Up and down Williams Avenue, and you
That's
could have a ball.
Everything.
There
so
was
why did
lots
they sell out? Did they?
They was manipulated out of this property. Just like when the freeway went through it, taking out all the businesses that was down in that area. It used to be nothing but nightclubs and things down there.
Grocery store, because was a
Grocery
Safeway
store.
sitting there. A record shop, Madrona record
Yeah.
shop was sitting there.
Johnny and Lenny.
Drugstore.
Johnny and Lenny, before they moved back up in this way, they started the first club down in that area. One of the first nightclubs, nice one where the bands would come in. Johnny and Lenny had that, and they ended up giving that business over to a black guy named Mr. Goose, and he ran that business.
That was our
It
neighbor.
was a neighbor. It was our neighbor when we was on commercial. He ran that business because before he worked for Johnny and Lenny in that store. Well, Johnny lost his license, the nightclub license, so he ended up, Mr. Goose taking it over, eventually bought it from him. Johnny and Lenny just stayed with the store. And
So what happened to these businesses? Did they relocate or they just?
this is just a lot of them just didn't get relicensed. They had to go out of business. A lot of them, a lot of those businesses was just
Sometimes it's hard to
to
reestablish yourself.
well, a lot of them didn't get reestablished because a lot of them was doing gambling. Black people made a living the best way they could. A lot of them was gambling joints.
Keystone. They had the Keystone.
Yeah, Keystone,
Gambling,
which
like
was
you
Tom
say,
Johnson.
You know.
Tom Johnson was a well-known man over in here, and they paid. You know, they had if they had the money to go downtown and pay City Hall to stay in business, then they could. Other than that, every so often they would bust those businesses. You know, have a raid on them, and that's how they paid the under the table money. You know, they busted, and they'd call him up and told him they were gonna bust his place. And he'd be downtown waiting on you when they busted to bail everybody out. Well, that's how he paid the under table money, you know, to the city officials. But then you had black cops that was put over in this area. Dick Bogle was one of them to spy on the other blacks. To help run and he was a good one. He was a tone from his heart. I'm serious. Dick Bogle, if he hadn't got off the police force, blacks were gonna kill him over here.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's
Dick
how terrible he
Bogle.
was.
Dick
Yeah.
Bogle was terrible. It
Well,
wasn't.
how did he get elected?
The white people elected Dick Bogle. He was born and raised in Florida.
Yeah.
See, but Dick Bogle, the white people put Dick Bogle in office. Blacks didn't vote for Dick Bogle. Not for them that know him. Didn't
He
vote
never
for
was
him.
nice to him.
He never was.
Very
It wasn't nothing
real
for him
cruel
to beat
the
black.
Oh,
It wasn't nothing
yeah.
for him to bust in the door down and start whooping on black people's head. See, Dick Bogle is one of the few black cops that was over in this area that was put over here to keep black people in line. He worked up to detective before he stepped down, before he retired off from the police department. But Dick Bogle, black people back in those days didn't like Dick Bogle.
What days
Okay.
was that like?
Huh?
What days was these? Like 19?
This was in the 40s,
40s and 50s.
40s and early 50s. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then he went to start as an anchor man for some television.
Channel 2.
Yeah.
Channel 2.
But then blacks didn't like him even then. Dick Bogle probably spoke up more since the white people attacked him so hard since he been down there as a commissioner. The first time I ever heard him actually speak up for in the behalf of any blacks, and that's not very much, you know. But Dick Bogle, no, he have never did anything in this city.
What about Charles Jordan?
Charles Jordan come here from somewhere else.
Texas,
and as far as I'm concerned, Charles Jordan never really did. He never really did nothing for blacks is concerned. I don't think so. He might have at one point, and they seemed to back him down on that when he was the commissioner of the police for the police department.
Oh.
And at the time that they put that, was it the chokehold on this guy?
Oh. Yeah.
What is your extension? Someone called me on my phone.
Oh, it's 7748.
Okay.
January 29th, 1992. That's I don't know if you want to tell us this, but how old are you?
I'm 40.
You was born
1951.
1951.
Here, Emmanuel.
Are you in the hospital?
Yeah. Now don't ask me what room.
Was there any problems? So, have you lived in Albina all your life, or?
I basically have lived in Northeast Portland all the time, and all my childhood I lived in Albina.
Okay, did you go off to college, or?
Yeah, I went briefly to Arizona State University in Tempe, Arizona for a year and a half, and then I left there and came back home and finished my education at Pacific University in Forest Grove. Okay. Then after I graduated from Pacific, then I moved back into Portland.
So what made you decide to stay here? I know a lot of people your age move around after a while.
Yeah, that's true. Primarily, I had a good network of friends and mentors, and I like the climate, believe it or not, and it seemed like a good opportunity, a good place to raise a family, and that's what I was interested in.
Are you married?
Yeah, married with 2 children. My children are 14 and 13.
Oh, so you got teenagers.
Mm-hmm. 2 of them.
Do you see any difference in between the way they was raised and they're being raised and the way you was raised?
Well, we had 5 kids in our family, and only my dad worked, and so there was less income. Even though, speaking probably in the spirit of just the black community, we would be considered maybe middle to upper middle of the black community as far as income. But my wife and I both work, and then we would probably be upper middle class as far as the income structure is. So they live different. They go to private schools where we went to public school, and of course everything's just a little bit different for kids now in the city. I mean, like I really can't distinctly remember us having to lock our door when we were growing up. But then there was 5 kids there. But now, when the kids go out and stuff, the doors get locked and stuff like that.
Where did you live at when you were growing up?
I grew up, as far as I can remember, which must have been like 2 years old, we lived on Skidmore and Rodney.
Okay.
So we were right, between Williams and Union, and between Alberta and Shaver.
Was it a black community or interracial community?
Well, my earliest memory is that initially when we moved there, it was maybe predominantly white. And so was the grade school that I went to, which is now King. At that time it was Highland. it was predominantly white. But soon thereafter, I don't know, probably by the time I got to second grade, I would have been like 9. It almost had all changed. And for initially, that area that I was in between Williams and Union, or Martin Luther King, it was like predominantly white. Within a short period of time, it was almost all black. But then it took a while longer before the area on the east side of Union was what it is today, predominantly black. You know, it took a while for blacks to start moving across Union, because that was the migration going eastward.
Can you describe the living conditions, as a teenager or a young man in college in Alabama?
As far as, well, let me go back to grade school. During that time that I was in grade school, they built Humboldt. The school system, we had very few minority teachers. I don't know if that's changed now, but I felt that we got a good education. And my 8th grade year was the first year that they experimented with busing. And so I was at the forefront of that because we were the oldest kids that got bused, and sort of like the guinea pigs. And there's a lot of kids that were probably your better students whose parents wanted them to get bused and try that integration thing. And it was a good experience looking back on it, but it was a difficult experience to live through, to be bused like that.
Wow.
Well, I had gone to the same school for 8 years, kindergarten to 7th grade, and just the familiarity that you have going to school with the same people, the teachers, knowing who you are and the expectations that you have, and having to start all over, made it for some anxiety. But at the same, in the same token, it was opened the door for other kids to come through and behind us to, try to get a better education, so to speak. But my verdict is still out on whether or not, if I had to do all over again, that's what I would want to do, because I think that I may have been exposed to a higher academic surrounding, but at the same time I think I lost some of the leadership and camaraderie that you develop by going to school with the same people and
Where did you go?
economic
Where did
background.
you go back to?
Well, the school is on 56 in Prescott. It's called Wrigley.
Okay.
And then our bus went to several schools and dropped off other kids at the other school was Whitaker and Joseph Meek, and the school that I went to, Wrigley. And at that time, those schools were all K through 8.
Okay. And those schools, Whitaker is black, isn't it? It's predominantly black.
Yeah, what they did was the actual Whitaker that we would go to each morning was on Columbia Boulevard.
Oh,
it's a new school there, and I don't think they use it anymore.
Oh, okay.
But in that same vicinity that the new one is.
Was there any racial tensions or?
Yeah, we had our incidents. The school that we went to basically just accepted us with open arms, and it was a good experience, mainly for them, to get exposure to minority kids. And we didn't have any conflicts there. I think everybody academically fit in. I don't know if that was by some kind of somebody did some research on the kids or anything, but I don't think anybody particularly had any academic problems. But we did have some incidents when we were on the bus going to and from, where there were some racial incidents. But for the most part, I think it went real well.
It was a positive. So when you became, say, in your 20s, that was like 1970 or?
No, let's see. When I was going through high school, that was my senior year was 1970.
Okay.
And so during that high school time, it also was kind of a transition period too, because one, Martin Luther King died in 1968, and there was a lot of, and the Vietnam War was going on, and then so there was a lot of activism and turmoil going on at that time. And
In Portland?
yeah, and then of course the riots they infiltrated up here too. We had that scene, but I think I was in 8th grade at that time, and so there was a lot of focus on the civil rights issue at that time. And Jefferson, the school I went to, we were the predominantly black high school in Portland. We only had one that was predominantly, well, we weren't predominantly black. It was like 40% black and maybe 55% white, and the other Mexican and Oriental. And so there was a lot of the integration focus on our school as a result, and that basically was a time period when things kind of changed, and there was more interracial dating, and there was more sensitivity to the civil rights issues. And then my senior year was the first year that they opened up the high schools for people to be able to go to schools outside of their geographic location. So that was a traumatic experience, in that it took away a lot of the dominance that Jefferson had in athletics, and a lot of the good students that wanted to go outside of the Jefferson district to get, quote unquote, a better education.
Jefferson has a real strong presence in Northeast Portland. I mean, it's been there for how long? I don't know.
Well, before my time, I don't know. It's probably the early 1900s.
Yeah.
And it does have a rich heritage of athletic excellence and also academic excellence, and has a lot to do with the feelings and the it can create a lot of goodwill for this community, how well it's perceived.
Preserved too. So you played football, right? Were you a quarterback?
Yeah, I played athletics since I can remember, and then in high school and in college.
Your dad had a lot to do with that? What did he?
Yeah, he made it available for me, and he was an athlete himself. But yeah, I just had it in my blood. That's what I like doing. He played tennis, and at the beginning, when he played tennis in the late 50s and early 60s, he would be the only black person that would be playing tennis, and he was pretty good at it. In fact, he went to college on a tennis scholarship, and then he started teaching some of the people that learned how to play tennis here, some of the blacks, and like, for instance, one of the best black tennis players here in Portland is Marion Blackburn, and he came up here as a young adult and then learned from my father, and then he now owns a tennis club in Beaverton.
Oh, okay, I know who that is. Yep, your mother was a housewife?
Yeah.
Was she active in any social groups or women's groups?
Not really. She had the responsibility basically of raising the kids. There was 5 of us, and basically she provided the support for him to get out and do the things that he did.
Was that pretty common? No women?
Yeah.
Black women in Portland?
Yeah. At that, in the 50s and 60s, it was a lot more prevalent than she worked some, but by the time I got in high school, she didn't work at all.
Did you appreciate that now?
Yeah, looking back on it, it had a lot of benefits of, always having something there to eat, and always having an adult there around the house to come home to. And I see the worth of that type of arrangement.
What about church activities? Was your family active in church? Or?
No, not my family. What we did was all the kids had their moments with the church, and I can remember the first church we went to was Berean Church as a family, and it was a big house, and it was kind of like a hub of activity for us as far as going out and doing arts and crafts and meeting other kids. And there was a good minister there, a guy named Reverend Russell, and then we just kind of have done our own thing as far as the churches that we go to now. I was baptized as a senior in high school at a Mennonite church. They had a small, like, outreach group that had a house that they used for a church. And it was right in the black community, not too far from my house. And a lot of us kids went there, both the church, and they had activities for, like, 4-H and wood shop. We went camping with them and stuff like that. And so a lot of my background that way was with the Mennonite church.
Besides the churches, were there any other social outlets for kids?
Yeah, they had Jack and Jill. Of course, I had my athletics to always depend on for socialization. Not too many things for the girls, outside of brownies and Girl Scouts and stuff like that.
But they did have brownies?
Yeah, and then, but kind of like the middle class, black folks had the Jack and Jill. That was more prominent at that time.
They like meat.
What was the anchor for your dad as a man? Besides working, was there a social club for men, African American men?
Well, they had the Royal Esquires and the Elks, but he didn't belong to any of those clubs. But they had a lot more at that time going for that type of activity. Like the NAACP was a lot more prominent at that time, and the Urban League, even though it's made a resurgence, it was a lot more viable type of institution where they did a lot of things that other groups have come in since and filled in those spaces. But he worked there at the Urban League for many years, and so that kept him involved with the black community.
You mentioned the fact that your dad was, well, because of his level of education in their case, an African American, I would say he was above the average in most ways. Did that open more doors for him in relating with the white community and creating opportunity for jobs, or was there more tension?
I think so. My father has a master's degree in chemistry, but then when he first migrated out here from first Texas, then to Detroit, and then to Portland, he was a waiter. I know that. I remember on my birth certificate it said that he was a waiter. But going through the ranks that he did, and having that education background, less conflict for him. And then I also don't ever recall, any particular racial biases that, he imparted on us as far as how to relate to the white community. So, I think that has helped all of our family members, as far as assimilating into the major society.
What about community leaders? Can you recall any individual that you considered a community leader? Someone that spoke for the needs of the blacks?
For a long time, I think that person was I guess they would be called the president of the Urban League, which was Shelton Hill. And then I can't recall who was, there was a guy named Ellis Casson, I can remember, that worked with, I think, the NAACP for a long time, was a spokesman. But I would say, if somebody went back to those days, I think Shelton Hill would be probably top of the line as far as having a voice for the community.
Now, Ron Hurley, he came to Portland in the 70s. Did he kind of just, how did he fall into becoming, an outspoken leader for Northeast Portland? This guy from New York, how come he was so well received?
Well, I know he was educated at Reed College and then ended up staying out here. But as far as I can see, because of his intelligence, and then he also has a good grasp of the tactics that galvanize people to make strides in improving our civil rights, like the time of in the 60s, early 60s and so forth, the sit-ins and marches, that type of thing, and how to galvanize people. I think he has a lot of experience and was, in at a time when that was a way to get things done, and he has carried forth with those type of things. And like I mentioned, he's a very intelligent man. He speaks well, and I think it's a natural evolution. And he's very, very pro our people. He makes for a good leader in that. He's very concerned about our economic and social plight.
Do you see any emerging leaders today?
Yeah, the thing that I think deters most from Portland and the black community is that we've had to transplant so many leaders. Like now, those people like Ron Herndon, and not so much Ron, but like Beryl Takufu, Reverend Garlington was another, in that there's not that many leaders that were born here, and a lot of that has to do with, at the time of, there's a lot of guys that were, and women for that matter, in the age bracket between 40 and 50, that when they finished college or what have you, there was a lot of opportunities at that time, and a lot of people moved away from Portland. And I have an older sister in that situation, but a lot of black folks left Portland that are in that age group, and that kind of took away a little bit of the native black leadership that I think is important for any city to have.
I agree. Is there tendencies for the African Americans in Portland or the Northwest not to be as aggressive when it comes to racial issues or standing up for the rights of
the people that are from here?
Born here, yeah, as compared to, where we have a larger population like Atlanta or Washington, places like that.
Yeah, I think the answer that I would give to your question is, yeah, I see that. One, you don't have much clout if you don't have a good economic status or base. And because a lot of the cream of the crop, so to speak, has left, then those jobs that were available that could put people in influential positions, they have had to recruit people from outside of the area, and then that creates your leadership from outside of the area, and basically you lose some of this heritage and history that can help change things for tomorrow. And so it's just a natural evolution. When you lose a lot of good people like that, and then you have to recruit people from out. There was more of a distinct community here at one time in the black community, where now, and the city's getting larger too, but it's not like we move like a team all the time. There's a lot of factions out there, and it could have happened that way even if people hadn't left, but it's more pronounced because you've got so many, you've got people coming in from Chicago, you've got people coming in from Boston, New York, and then, they come here and don't know the history. They don't have the family, the extended family here and stuff like that to galvanize the community.
Do your grandparents live here?
No. My father and mother are the first ones out of our families. And then all of us were born here in my family.
What about the social life, the nightlife in Portland? I heard that has changed over the years.
Yeah, there have been some clubs that have been in existence going back as far as I can remember. The Cotton Club would be one club that was prominent. And then for a long time, Paul Knowles was the owner of Geneva's. And that was always a nice place to go and socialize. But there's never been what I would call a lot of options. There's things to do if you, like your Lynx, they've always had a strong influence in their sphere of things. There's not that many. The fraternity and sorority influence is not as pronounced as you see sometimes in the South for those type of activities, but there's never been a lot of options for us because historically we haven't had a big population base to draw from, but probably the biggest thing that I could see that would be a downfall to the development of the area is that we haven't been able to cultivate a lot of businesses. I think if you go back and look at all these pictures, what it reminds you, well, where are all these businesses now?
Mm-hmm. Do you remember William Avenue and I think Broadway?
Yeah, in fact, they had quite a few different stores, none of which probably were owned by blacks at that time. You know, there was, I don't know what ethnic background they were, German or what have you, but there were businesses right in the community that were employing more.
What happened? And how come, they left and blacks wasn't able to retain them?
Well, I think it's a trend that probably is a blueprint, everywhere. And I think one thing that happens, and I have to maybe sit down and write all this stuff down to really know what I was talking about, that once those whites did the urban, where they left, then what was left was the black community to support those businesses. And for a long time, those people stay and then siphon off that business that they can get. But then there wasn't that transition where people learn those businesses. The apprenticeships and father teaching son and stuff to carry and hand down those businesses to the next guy. And it was kind of like a domino effect. Once some of those businesses start dying, it creates a void and a lack of business activity for the rest of the businesses. But
you see the same thing in the housing,
yeah, up until here recently, but the same trend was happening there for the longest. And even now, probably the people that are in my maybe 10 years older or so than myself were a lot more successful obtaining home ownership than those in the age group that, around my age and stuff like that kind of bypassed them, because there's a lot of people that own their homes in these communities, but hopefully there'll be those children that will be able to take advantage of getting into them. And that's one thing that needs to occur for us to get a good financial foothold. Is any community needs to be able to support itself by having people buy houses from one another. Because when you think about it, when you sell a house, that's probably the time in your life when you have the most money. And then you're able to buy things, you're able to go out and, you're going to buy another house and probably buy up. And so if you don't have that opportunity where you're doing that, unless, you hit the lottery or, you come into some kind of inheritance or something like that, most of us are living month to month. And so you don't accumulate the wealth to make investments, whether it be your house or businesses, to improve our economic lot. So what I see as my vision is that that's what needs to take place, is that there needs to be black people buying houses from black people. And once that starts occurring, and the way that starts happening is people have to start taking care of their property. And even if it's mother selling the son, it still creates, or daughter, it still creates that activity, and the velocity of the dollars start turning over, and that's what needs to happen.
Do you see an afterglow in a way in terms of those improving their homes, because blacks don't normally qualify for home improvement loans and stuff like that? Means like, a barrier there, they don't necessarily get those loans, whether they qualify or not.
Yeah, and that's what I see most of. I mean, there's not too many people that don't leverage somewhere along there. They need the banks. That's why the banks are so viable. Everybody needs to be able to get in and get a lump sum of money so they have enough room, working capital to operate, whether maintain your house or your business or what have you. You need to get a hold of a large sum of money so you can do something. But then once you get that money, then the key is to be able to let it grow. And you have to know how to take care of your stuff. You know how to manage your money. And those are some of the things that the banks are starting to try to address, that education component, so that people start learning how to do those things, and so they don't wake up when they're 40 years old and realize, they missed these opportunities because they didn't take care of this or that. And that's the frustrating part of what I have to do, is that oftentimes that's how long it takes a lot of times for us to realize that. It doesn't take the white majority that long to realize that, because they have a lot more to fall back on. There's a lot more opportunity to get those lump sum of money and to make those mistakes earlier so that they learn sooner. And then their foreparents have had the experiences of buying homes and selling homes, and they impart that knowledge. And so we tend to, repeat some of the same things because we don't have a great heritage of doing that.
How did you get in this business?
Well, it wasn't by design. I got my degree in social science, and so then I started looking for a job in that area. But went to the Urban League, and they said that they had a job at one of the savings and loans, which was Ben Franklin at that time, and they were looking to hire trainees. And I'm sure that one of the reasons that they had the advertisement with the Urban League was because they wanted some minorities. And so I went in and interviewed, and though I didn't have any experience and my degree wasn't related, I had enough math background and people skills to, overcome some of my shortcomings as far as the business world. And then, because it was a trainee program, then I got to learn the whole business. And then from there, I just kind of stuck around because I got experience doing it.
You must have had to make some special inroad to become a community lender. But this is a new concept, right?
Pretty much. It goes in cycle. I did some of the same things that I'm doing now, not so much the part of the public relations that I did, but some of the type of loans that I make. I used to make those type of loans at Ben Franklin too. But what's different now is that it's a whole phenomena that's occurring that impacts all the banks, and all of us know that in order for us to have a clean record with the Community Reinvestment Act, that we need to show our efforts everywhere where we take in the deposits. Like if you did an overlay in the past where, we're still taking in deposits here, but you don't show that you're making any loans here. So the government says, hey, what's going on? Somebody's right. You guys are discriminating. So the effort is to make a concerted effort to make financing opportunities available for people. So that, I was just at the right time, because there's very few minorities that have any experience doing what I do. And that's all it boils down to, is just the experience.
I saw that article that was on the table. Can I get a copy of that before I leave?
Is what you're doing having some result? Are you seeing some changes in the number of people, minority that are qualifying for loans? Is the education beginning to make an impact to help the community?
I think so. It's still early in the game to assess that, but I think that successful is something that needs to continue. But right now, the hard part is that the education is going to take time to sink in, but the awareness is getting out there. People are aware of just what that means to own a home. It gets you in, it gets your foot into the door of economic independence. Because like I said, you get in, you buy a house for let's say $30,000. You take care of it, you fix it up, and then due to inflation or appreciation, and the fact that you're paying the mortgage down each month, then when you sell it, you've got some working capital. And that's the key to most people having an economic base, is that house. So I think people are becoming more and more aware of it. But it's going to take some time because, like for instance, a lot of times I'll see a situation where it's a credit problem, and it takes time to get away from that problem where the bank will say, well, you've shown us that you got your finances in order and you can handle your bills. And so it takes time to heal it, so to speak.
As a closer of my interviews, I like to kind of get your kind of philosophies on the future of Portland. What do you see happening in the future for blacks in terms of just economic advancements, just growing and the growth of the African American community? Is there hope, or?
Yeah, I think that for one, it's what I've read and what I've come to know is that it's a very livable place, and it's a beautiful place to be. But right now is a critical time for us as a black people, probably all over the country. It's critical because all of us are so much more aware of the subtleties of racism, of discrimination and stuff like that, but also we're more aware of the opportunities, and there's going to be like a rush for people to try to take advantage of those opportunities that are out there, whether it be jobs and housing or what. Right now, there's a lot of people that are in the same boat, and it's not just restricted to minorities, because in the banking industry, we don't just define it as addressing a black problem. We're trying to address what we call low and moderate income, and that can mean white or whatever. So I think that overall, the housing stock in Portland is good. The opportunities are not up to what you would like, but then that's prevalent the whole country as far as having those opportunities for good jobs. And part of that is because of that void in leadership that was precipitated by so many people that left. And now we're just riding the crest of a lot of people that are my age that are at the forefront and head of their respective type of businesses. Mm-hmm. And so I see the future as being very encouraging. The gang thing is, if you try to take a perspective that takes you out, it could end up working to some of an advantage, because it has left a lot of areas that people don't want to move into that are close to downtown, that once the gang thing clears up, there's going to be a lot of properties that are still affordable for people to buy. And so that could end up being a blessing in disguise, that there are still a lot of affordable houses for people to buy.
When you talk low and moderate income households, are you talking Northeast Portland, inner Northeast Portland?
Basically, but the Southeast too.
Southeast.
Yeah, there's some parts of Southeast and Lentz and where the housing prices are still moderate. But to end that up, I'm more optimistic about the future of Portland, just because it's such a nice place to be, and the weather and all that stuff is real good. We just need to, basically, the business opportunity is something that, there needs to be help from the financial industry to help those businesses get started and stuff, but there also has to be an effort to train and get people in a position to take advantage of those financial opportunities to own the businesses and stuff, because I feel right now that's the biggest void. I think we're getting to the point where we can address the housing issue. If someone is basically qualified to get a loan, and there's no lender that will discriminate because of where the house is. Mm-hmm. So now I think the housing is basically being taken care of. We need to take care of some of the business opportunity that
you need some more sound books. Mm-hmm. One man can't do it all. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Is there anything you have?